Give me a sec because there is a put. Okay, as I was saying, we have reached the last unit in MDI 007, which is subcontracting and flexible specialization. And as I was speaking before, it's almost like, everything is going in a very cyclic way. Started off from a assembly line factory situation, and we have come around into flexible production. So there is nobody wants a factory line identical product with identical characteristics. Everybody wants a personalized product. And you will see also everything following in terms of, if you look at media today, your media is personalized. Nobody wants a straightforward newspaper or a single TV slot. They want a personalized way algorithms deliver feed. You look at economics, you look at fashions, you look at culinary habits, you look at various aspects of life. There's a whole lot of privacy and personalization in it, and economy also seems to follow suit. So let's look at this particular unit. Conceptualizing subcontracting as an interfirm relationship, nature and challenges of global production network. Remember, parallelly, the globalization which involved, an interconnection in terms of media, faster transport itself is moving a lot of things around. There's a lot of toss up which is happening everywhere. Understanding and meaning of flexible specialization. And as usual, like before we start, there are a few questions. So is these statements by Karl Marx true or false? Capitalism is a system that produces commodity. Which of them is true? Which of them is false? Can everybody look at my screen? Can all of you look at my screen and hear my voice?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So which of this statement by Karl Marx is true or false? Capitalism is a system that produces commodities. Anybody wants to take a guess on this? Commodity is anything produced for sale, anything which produced with the purpose of consumption is not a commodity. Are all of them true? All of them false? Is anyone true? Anyone false? This is as stated by Karl Marx. Who would like to take a guess?
All true.
All true. Vinod, absolutely right. All of them are true. In fact, Karl Marx started this in terms of the premise. Number two, what is the term for specific type of work people do to produce particular goods or services? For example, carpenter builds furniture, teacher educates students, and chef prepares meals. What is the term used? Take a guess. And these are very specifically from the unit of Karl Marx. It is definitely something to do with labor, but what labor? Okay, it's the
Skilled
term
or
is,
specialty?
sorry.
Is it skilled or specialty?
We know the term Karl Marx uses is called concrete labor, because there is a concrete product or service which happens out of this specific type of work. So it's called concrete labor. Okay, question number three. How long it should ideally take to make something when you consider the typical methods and resources available in the society is called? Again, Karl Marx uses a very specific term which he calls socially necessary labor time, SNLT. And anything which takes more time than SNLT has less value, and anything which is made with less time than SNLT has more value. That's how Karl Marx describes it. It's called SNLT, socially necessary labor time. Okay, question number four. What refers to the actual activity of working. It includes the steps and and actions people take to produce goods or services. What is the term called? Take a guess.
Production, sir.
It's actually called the labor process. Actual activity of working, steps and the actions people take to produce goods or service. So it's a process, labor process. Okay, question number 5. What is the potential or ability of a worker to perform labor? What is it called? Obviously, it is called labor something.
Labor output.
Labor power, actually. So these are very specific Karl Marx terms. In fact, as I said, with each unit that I'm going ahead, I pick up some questions from unit serial wise to just get a quick idea about it. You may or may not remember it, but the idea of how the labor movement happens. Okay, let's start with the unit. Need for subcontracting can arise due to stable nature of the market. There's a fixed capital. So there are multiple reasons why subcontracting can arise. In fact, subcontracting, as I was talking about everything being cyclic, before industrialization, there was something called a putting out system, which was akin to subcontracting and was prevalent in 16th century urban Europe. In fact, in MDI 008, where we are looking at processes, production processes, we will be looking a little bit more at the putting out process. Internal subcontract system in industrial production that existed since the industrial revolution. Inevitably, you will see, and again, as I said, if you notice carefully, there is a cyclic nature of things. Things keep going around and coming back. More often than not, when they come back, they are rehashed, they are in a newer form. But nothing per se goes out of our collective understanding, because remember, human being tends to uh, as they say, if you have to see what is happening today, the best way to find it out is go back in time and see what happened in history. And that's why there is this old saying, those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. It's a very famous line. Inevitably, things come back. So there is an internal subcontract. The putting out system was already practiced, has also been construed as an efficient mechanism of production organization, healthy division of labor, and better utilization of workplace. So we will go a little bit more into subcontracting. Why did subcontracting come about? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? Classic example is the Japanese automobile major Toyota. In fact, at one particular time in the 90s, the Japanese way of production was lauded across. And today, everybody has copied and brought out more innovation stuff. They brought it out first in terms of small and medium enterprises. Widespread system of subcontracting was to maintain considerable control over conditions of work and pay through adult male operatives. Now, these are alternate. Again, as I said, academics is alternate perspectives. Never ever is there one reason. The one reason can be the predominant reason in terms of narration, but each thing that you do always has plus and negatives. The perpetuation of subcontracting almost always secures a hegemonic position for the parent enterprise. So, is it a power thing? Is it a way to control smaller enterprises? Is it a way to make it more exploitative? We will see as we go along in this presentation. Advantages of subordinate status of the supplier or subcontractor, a certain opacity or translucent. And we will also see how, when these subcontracting things or flexible productions translate into developing countries like India or Indian subcontinent, or even Asian countries like China, how it changes. So let's look at first the typologies of subcontracting. There is something called capacity subcontracting, involving outsourced parts of production to external units to order additional or excess. So inevitably, you have excess or demand. You subcontract it to an additional company to help you in the production. Prevents new fixed and this prevents new fixed capital investment by parent firm, allows it to continue operating at a plant capacity. More often than not, remember, in the capitalist model, the capitalist is looking at profit, and whatever ways he's able to make profit, he or she will do that. So this is called capacity subcontracting, also called horizontal subcontracting. May take the form of job work where the parent firm gives portion of the order by supplying required raw material and detailed product specification. So capacity subcontracting also can be of various forms. Then there is second form is specialization subcontracting, forms of vertical subcontracting. Parent firms gets parts of the production or process done through external firms endowed with specialized skill. What typically Toyota started doing, getting certain parts by certain companies. Then there is something called supplier subcontracting, independent status of external unit or supplier, produces a separate component of product, which is also again a part of the Toyota subcontracting. A product which is almost entirely organized, designed, and given final form. Product forms part of another product being produced by the parent firm. The Toyota company, the car, the brake lining or the brake pads or the steering or the steering wheel or the tires, specialization and supplier subcontracting. Then there is something called commercial subcontracting, inter-firm dependency. Parent firm organizes production, provides specification, procures product, only to market, promote, and distribute the same. Something like Amazon, though Amazon is not, getting them to produce, but it is picking up products and, promoting and distributing. The apparent atypical role of the parent firm not engaged in direct production has gained ground during the recent years as aggregation. If you look at it from the digital economy point of view, Google News, Google Finance, these are all aggregators. Somebody else is producing the thing, they are acquiring it and distributing it. Amazon being the classic example. In fact, Amazon has taken it a step further. What it does, it has this entities which it has created, which helps it even produce things under its brand name, like the Solimo brand name it has. Then there is something called business process outsourcing and knowledge process outsourcing. Again, latest terms, latest ways of outsourcing which are happening in a knowledge economy, not directly concerned with manufacturing. Businesses or knowledge processes are being outsourced, like in terms of legal, in terms of medical, in terms of finance, and advancement in information and communication technologies, and growing significance of knowledge economy. So a new sort of production is happening. Firms engaged in vertical subcontracting operate at distinct stages of hierarchy. Firms in horizontal subcontracting carry out the same task and are placed at the same level. Again, there are hierarchical models which get formed. Inevitably, understand the human society more often than not turns hierarchical in different ways. And then those hierarchical patterns then lead to some sort of a political control. Let's look at the Indian context. Evolving in response to dynamic changes in industrialization process. In fact, India is a unique case in the sense it did not move from agriculture into industry into tertiary, which most of the developed economies did, The industrial part was almost, there was a certain amount of leapfrogging by the Indian economy. Agriculture, a small industry, and totally tertiary in terms of services. The complex world of subcontracting best comprehended through the nuance of significant participation. The Indian thing is particularly, and I think this is there in the whole Indian subcontinent, a lot of informal economy. We have a very high predominance of the informal economy. And this is what we were talking last time. When the demonetization happened, it affected the informal economy, which was purely cash based. While a certain share of contract between parent and takes place through formal instruments, a huge part is never recorded. And that becomes a major challenge in terms of when you try and study the Indian economy, or you study of ways of changing the Indian economy. So any person who willy-nilly, without actually doing a evidence-based understanding of the Indian economy, tries to make changes, always lands on his face, his or her face. There is something called formal subcontracting and informal subcontracting, categories which are not introduced in the literature on subcontracting. In fact, if you see around, a lot of our work is done in the informal sector. Every household activity is in the informal sector. Every contractual activity around you will be in the informal sector. In fact, National Sample Survey Office have alluded that incidence of subcontracting has been rising since 60, sharply during post-reform period. And these are all these studies which have been done. Mostly focused on the organized or formal sector. And inevitably, that's the mistake a lot of scholars do when they try and study the Indian industry or in the Indian economy. They tend to look at the organized sector. And there is a large informal sector which is missing. And in the informal sector, any of the 4 types of subcontracting can be done. It is not uncommon to find anchor firms providing technical guidance on product specifications and processes as part of the subcontracting arrangement. And nature and extent depends on the status of the parent firm. So how this works is pretty flexible, based on the business conditions, based on the parent firm, based on the people running the parent firm, and so on and so forth. Savings on cost of labor and evading attendant labor regulation have been the most common cited reason for the growth of subcontract arrangement. We had looked at how the labor laws, there was one view which says the labor laws are there to help the labor, especially the Indian context. But a larger study also said that the labor laws actually hurt the Indian labor, because of the contradictory laws between center and states, labor being a concurrent subject in the Indian context. And the laws have not been rationalized irrespective of, and have been there since God knows whenever they were set up, considering the fact that the industry itself has changed. So I was listening to this anecdotal story about an industrial law which said that in a factory of more than 100 people or something to that effect, the law said that there should be a utensil in which the people who eat pan can throw the beetle juice. Now, when you look at software companies, which employs hundreds of people, are also designated as a factory, a labor inspector can come in and say, you don't have that utensil to put beetle juice, and I'm fining you this because it's a contravention of the industrial law. So this story was narrated to me, and it was so absurd, but that's the way it was. So the laws have to be kind of moderated, normalized with respect to the change of the business situation. Firm consciously minimize their capital investment by promoting subcontracting, because once they minimize their capital investment, you can get somebody else to do, in addition to taking advantage of specialization and division of labor, is largely guided by two considerations: lower labor cost and overhead cost. In fact, if you look at the newest thing from the Indian forces of the Agniveer scheme, it's almost like subcontracting. What is typically happening in advanced contract economies, most of the US today, army, or in fact other countries, are contractors, which reduces overhead costs, restricting in-house employment of workers to minimize the potential threat from organized labor. That is another reason what is said in terms of subcontracting. And mind you, this is the Indian context, and obviously a part of it has been taken from various other things which are happening in the Western world. That most formal sector parent company would rather prefer relatively traditional segments of informal enterprise with clear preference for home-based, female-owned and asset-poor. A 2014 study. Obviously, then the parent company is able to exercise political, when I say political, pressures on these, home enterprises or informal enterprises to get a better deal and to keep the labor cost low. However, providing financial assistance to subcontracting firms did not figure prominently in such studies. So, you're getting the business, you do the stuff, not provide you with the financial assistance, only provide you with trade credit. Where, for example, in Agra, subcontracting is a dominant form of production organization. So provide you with trade credit, not provide you with a financial assistant. You keep the labor low. You do home-based work, and the parent company is able to keep more of the profits. What we see today in the Indian agriculture sector also, where the farmer is selling his or her produce in peanuts, whereas the large part of the money is kept by the middlemen. Because when you buy, let's say vegetables in the market and you find a high price, a very small percentage goes to the farmer, and the farmer then becomes the home based enterprise, whereas the middlemen are the parent firms or the anchor firms which pick up the produce. So far as manufacturing is concerned, still operates at a level that take advantage of the low road syndrome. In fact, largely there is a low road syndrome that we talked about in the last class, where prioritizes cost cutting over profit, cost cutting and profits over well-being of the workers, prevailing in the informal enterprise. In fact, informal enterprise becomes best, because if the worker suffers, too bad. The situation is also no different even in the services domain. For example, the IT and the IT enabled services may be referred to an important example of international subcontracting. And the interesting part of international subcontracting in the IT sector is the fact that the BPOs are operational even during India's main holidays, while they tend to go down or shut down in the Western world's predominant holidays, or they are expected to work on other things even when they are on holidays, the clients are on holidays. So what they say is the strict and the obnoxious tailorist labor control practices in these call centers have reduced the workers to what they call cyber coolies. Unearthly hours or timetable, unusual norms, excessive client-oriented sector, the employees are often found themselves in socially excluding and demeaning situations. So demeaning need not be in a factory environment or in a mining and metallurgy environment. It could be in the current IT-enabled services. Despite existence of vendor development program and subcontracting exchanges, state and national level since 1995, private firms have hardly retained subcontracting relationships with the same firm. And one of the ways is to keep shifting firms. No comprehensive information available in the function of these, is obvious that most MSCs are unable to access whatever service. And the best way to, as we had talked in the last unit also, what typically, when even the Supreme Court says that if there is a work which is perennial, then there should not be a contractual obligation onto it. What typically the parent firms or anchor firms do is to keep changing the employees for the same amount of work, to overcome the law and the regulation. And this is largely because of the global production networks and labor. The global locating or spacing of parts of production has been practically effective and growing often by transnational cooperation. See, inevitably, with capitalism focusing on profit, and once they realized that they could push the developing world to make cheaper products and with better communication and transportation, subcontracting was the logical choice. Send parts of the product or production outside, let those countries deal with their labor problems. What the developed world wanted was cheap products, or with more profits, which they could then sell to their own people. Even by early 70s, assertions around international subcontracting had made on ground that it would only help to create employment opportunities. And the narration was that this was help creating employment opportunities in the developing countries and expose these countries to advanced technology and modern methods of managing business. So this was the narration, or this was the pitch for selling these subcontracting processes to developing countries. Now, because of lack of regulation or strong regulation or proper laws in place in developing countries, obviously it was the low road which the countries wanted to travel. Linkages of MSME, micro, small, and medium enterprise in developed economies with transnational cooperation would enhance export promotion. That was another thing to talk about in terms of this subcontracting. Interface with global standards, lead to transfer of technology, build technology capacity, and industrial competitiveness in development. So these were the ways to sell these things in the developing countries. And these arguments have found resonance in documents of influential intergovernment agencies, World Bank, OECD, UNIDO, UNCAD. Mid-80s, neoliberalism, international business subcontracting has emerged as a significant business strategy by large firms typically headquartered in the industrial global north. Logistics compliance to both product and process standards determined by a voluntary private standard setters and inter-country and inter-trade development coordination. So you set the standards, you set the coordination, you push for higher trade, and you push this narrative that this subcontracting is beneficial for your company, for your country, and let the country handle the labor and the laws. TNC have exercised major control over developing economies, MSME subcontracting. And this way, they are able to control. This is almost like an economic colonization. You don't have to get in large military to colonize. This is an economic colonization. The persistence of exploitative working conditions in lower tiers of supply firms is subsumed under the claim of a win-win outcome. To creation of huge job potential, transfer of skill and technology to look over. So inevitably, again, as the way of the world happens today, unless countries And under countries, the labor organizations or the NGOs or the labor is looking out for their own, selves. More often than not, these transnational corporations are more interested in getting standard quality, standard product at the lowest available cost so that they can reap in the highest profits. Myriad sweatshops in global south as informal enterprises working for TNC have been widely cited, and claims of global production networks ensuring labor standards and decent working have been contested. So again, as I said, more often than not, if you see, there'll be different standards which exist in global north and different standards which exist in global south in everything that you see. Now, for example, the US is facing a major backlash in terms of jobs. The reason why US offloaded all those jobs, production and otherwise, into the global south, because the labor laws and the trade unionism is extremely strong in the US, and it is much costlier to do things out there. But today politics has taken its own life, and they are trying to now get those jobs back in the US. And obviously, this will lead to higher production costs, and then the transnational corporations will come up with some other strategy. For example, we have heard cases of, there was a fire in Dhaka's Tarzeen fashion factory, Ali Enterprise in Karachi. There was a whole building of Rana Plaza, which came down in Dhaka, killing 1,100 workers. Now, it is something like this. When this thing happens, the transnational corporation does not take any blame, because it has subcontracted work to another organization in these countries, and it is for them to ensure whatever labor laws or labor welfare is there. Major lapses, buyer companies could not be held responsible. In fact, there is a whole campaign in the global north where people are now pushing these brands to ensure that when they subcontract, there is decent working conditions. These are not sweatshops. Children are not used for production, and so on and so forth. Collusion of global capital with state, as also local vested interests, even in labor and environment standards, were violated blatantly. And inevitably, this would happen, because when you are running to the bottom of the road in terms of profits, something will have to give, and that is typically labor. And this also happened because there was a built-in rigidity of the 4-day Taylorist system. And this is leading to what we call flexible specialization. Again, as things have moved from an industrial age into an information age, people want personalized products. And the 4-day Taylorist system, as we had talked about earlier, 4-days being the assembly line, and the tailoring being the management and the labor, scientific ways, were extremely rigid. They started crumbling under pressure of competitiveness, moving from a supply determined volume. People don't want a homogeneous output anymore, to a discrete, demand driven, exceedingly customized and differentiated production structure. And the industry had to follow suit. In an assembly line kind of situation, in a homogeneous product kind of a situation, you had unsold output, rise of unutilized capacity, retrenchment of labor skilled in specific tasks, because the fashion changed, people's demand changed. So the companies and the economy had to be built around a flexible demand. And that's how this flexible specialization came in. And again, remember, flexible specialization was the pre-industrial era, where there were specialized artisans making specialized things. So we are almost doing a cyclic return. Uncertain demand firms, performance crucially hinged upon flexibility, or rather degree and nature of quickness to be responsive to a product. Process innovation, customer needs of consumer. And this flexibility is very easy to small and medium enterprises. Again, pre-industrialization, there were these small enterprises. So we are almost coming back to pre-industrialization age, where there were artisans, specialized products, small batch production, labor endowed with multiple skill and task, and importantly, response variously to discrete demands given by existing factors of production, flexible specialization. In fact, today, one of the skill set of a labor which is required in the labor market is a flexible skill set, flexible specialization. If you have a very fixed specialization or a fixed knowledge, you are at a disadvantage. And this specialization, flexible specialization, becomes an innovative strategy, permanent innovation, ceaseless change, multi-use equipment, skilled worker and creation through policies, industrial community that restricts the form of competition. So inevitably, we've come back into flexible production, flexible specialization, moved from a assembly line, de-skilled person into a specialized, a flexible specialization. Change in market signals, mainly firms' preparedness for a continuous state of innovation, technology, or organization. Radical shift in relationship between technology and labor, the manner in which the firm is managed. And that's how the AI is now coming in for this specialization, because now you have the data and the tools to use that, to use that technology. You have the computing power, you have a phenomenal amount of data to be able to use a technology like artificial intelligence. Ability to diversify, switch production without compromising on skill, acumen, and quality, or retaining represents flexible specialization or just flexibility, not commensurate with rigid forms of organization of production as those based on assembly line. And that's why if you see in the knowledge economy, most of these companies are pretty horizontal rather than vertical in terms of hierarchies, because a horizontal hierarchy is much more prone to flexibility than a vertical hierarchy. And that also clearly shows how much governments across the world are at the wrong end of the curve based on flexibility, because government is always structured hierarchically, vertical hierarchy, whereas the world is moving horizontal. Flexibility through technology, organization upgrade, imparting skills, familiarity with modern methods of manufacturing, new work cultures, partial shifts of work involve substantial training inputs. The digital diaspora is a way of flexible and an innovative working strategy. The work from home is a flexible, innovative working strategy. So, example, flexible manufacturing system of small, medium batch production, manufacturing, use of computer, numerically controlled machines linked through automated transportation system, Japanese management techniques of just-in-time and total quality management is again goes in terms of flexible specialization as an innovative strategy. In fact, the technology companies are a great example of flexible manufacturing and innovative strategies. And in this comes another aspect of industrial clusters. Industrial clusters basically places where a lot of industries of the similar types are operating, because then you have talent, manpower, specialized skills, but also institution and organization. Similarly placed firms, as typically in industrial cluster, contribute to achieving flexibility by constituent firms. as early as 1890 found firms in industrial districts derive benefit of agglomeration and external economies irrespective of size. It is something like this. If there are people studying migration and diaspora at one place, let's say a WhatsApp group, they can quickly exchange what is the question paper, what are the assignments to be done. It always helps. So these WhatsApp cluster is the same as an industrial cluster in the real world. Sharing of access or business information, innovation in a cluster represent what institutional flexibility could imply. A WhatsApp group is an information world's way of an industrial cluster of the industrialization age. Or a Facebook group, or any group today on digital media works the same way. On social cultural factors in boosting local businesses is a crucial point in appreciating the fact collective facilities, flexible efficiencies as joint action and competitive advantage derived from local external economies become easily. So the idea of local becomes much easier to handle. Most of the developing economies' firm practices in attaining flexibility may be classified as low road. Now, that's how it changes when it moves into the developing countries. Cost cutting on labor remains a commonplace strategy. To be competitive, best achieved with informality and labor market deregulation. And that is why you will have a lot of talk in the media about labor market deregulation, or the labor laws deregulation, because that way you are able to take the low road to destructive approach. Global debate on flexible specialization and industrial cluster, the relegation of labor issues to the background has been a serious limitation, suggesting a strategic silence in policy. Because inevitably, the policy is also directed by the capitalist mode. Remember, the media also, when you look at discourses, is a capitalist mode of production. And the media, in one of its ways, will not disrupt the basic way politics and the capitalism is supposed to be done. So all these things then run to try and push down labor issues, for example. Let's look at forget the developing world. Even in the developed world, there is a major debate regarding Amazon trying to prevent a trade union, because again, Amazon, being a capitalist country, would like to capitalist economy would like to maximize profits and push labor down. Alternative, constructive or aspirational high road, efficiency enhancement and innovation through economic gains, wage gains, improvement in social. Now you can see these are options which are available to everyone doing business. In fact, that's where morality and ethics become a very important point. You can either do it ethically and still make profit, or you can take the low road down and make profits. And ethically, they say it can be done ethically, but it is tiresome in terms of following laws, making sure that people are well paid, training them. Most of the capitalists do cost cutting in trying to take that money also. Attaining high degree of technology and organization flexibility is possible to enhance labor productivity and in turn wages through investing in training and multi-skilling. Now, inevitably, if you look at Indian companies, how much do Indian companies spend in terms of R&D or in terms of trainings? Very little, because somewhere down the line, it has been made as a culture in terms of that training is a waste of time and money. new methods of manufacturing, creating conducive work culture, modernizing organization and financial management. Now, these require thought process, these require work, this requires effort. Somewhere down the line, it all again depends on whether a company or its owners are willing to do that. So let's, okay, we are very much on time. Let's sum up. Important strategy post Fordism, industrial subcontracting, grown both in national and global level, encourages segmentation of workforce between a core and periphery. Workers in the parent company are in the core. Peripheries are low paid and more prone to exploitation. Various types, capacity specialization, supplier, commercial, BPO, KPO. Subcontracting in Indian context has remained a vital component of industrial organization, may also be construed as a disintegrated production, including what may be termed as international subcontracting or global production networks. Just a sec. Give me a... Okay. And there is flexible specialization represents a strategy of permanent innovation, accommodation to ceaseless change, based on flexible multi-use equipment, more complex form. Flexibility is used to optimize to induction of microelectronics in various stages. So technology can be used for subcontracting and flexible production. There are two references. There are more references in the SLM once you receive it, but I picked up two: regional development and contemporary industrial response, determinants and impact subcontracting. And I come to an end in case there is any question. Hang on, let me just switch on my video. Yeah. How do GPNs affect the global distribution of job? So, Domingos, inevitably, so GPNs are looking at profit. Now, there are two things. So there is a movement of labor from the developing countries into the developed countries to supposedly have a better quality of life. Because remember, the payment with a particular skill in a developing country is much lesser than what a person would get if he goes to a developed country. That's why there is this perception that a developed country's life is much better. You are able to save more and send money back in form of remittance. Now, as politics also comes in and as capitalist profit comes in, these guys would rather get all these jobs back in the developing countries rather than get these people to come there. And they put out this narration that, oh, now these jobs are going to come here. Let's say, for example, there is this current narration that Tesla is going to invest or Apple is going to invest so many $1 million to open a plant out here, with this assumption that this opening of the plants will open up so many jobs. But is those jobs exploitative? How this moves then becomes then it's the transnational corporations which control how the jobs will move. And more often than not, it goes against the interests of the people or the labor in the developing countries. Because once they look at the fact that the jobs are limited because there is a technology which is involved, so the jobs are not as many as they feel they would come, because they are all technology intensive, not labor intensive. So this labor anyway is free to move, and a part of this labor gets sucked into this nefarious traffic deals because they want to have a better deal. And in the end, who's responsible begs the question. Domingos?
What is it, I got it.
I hope I've been able to answer. So, yeah. So inevitably, more often than not, every country would need to, kind of have data on how many labor or how many people are coming in the labor market every year. What is the kind of skill set which is required? How will they utilize this labor And that is why developing countries with high labor should typically employ strategies which are labor intensive rather than capital or technology intensive, because then they are able to say, for example, in India, Manrega was an extremely efficient labor intensive job creating exercise, and that not only gave work to people at their places of stay, prevented them for coming into the urban areas, because urban development itself is a whole ball game, and assured them of 100 days of work per year, and gave them money for that, and created community assets. So it was an extremely well thought of, or an extremely good initiative of Government of India. And such initiatives by developing countries always helps the country in terms of retaining labor, or utilizing their labor, as well as looking at the employment market. Domingos?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. I got it.
Any other question? Firoz, Ani has not joined still. Okay. The next speaker has not joined. If there is no other question, then I think I'll hand the baton to Firoz. And in case the next speaker joins, Firoz. Firoz, are you there? Let me make Firoz the host. Just a sec. I'll send a message to Firoz so that I can leave.
Sir, I'm here.
Okay, Firoz, I made you the host. I'm leaving. Ani has not joined.
I think Annie is not there. Sir, you make me a host. I'll wait for 5 to 10
Yes,
minutes.
I have made you a host. I'm
Thank
leaving. Have a nice weekend. We'll meet next Saturday at 3 o'clock with MDI. We'll start with MDI 008 in terms of production processes and all that stuff. And as I said, when we are looking at this from a macro perspective, how things are cyclic, and you will see that how things keep coming back. And it's a very interesting way to understand how the world moves. Have a nice week.